All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, we're back with the podcast of awesomeness. We're very sorry about the entire sabbatical we took for about 2 weeks, I guess. But there was a lot going on in the last 2 weeks, and I'll explain it to you guys on some other time. But today we have a very special guest. We have a very special podcast. For those of you who are watching this for the first time, if it's your first time watching me on Revolution in Eastern Wrestling, or if it's the first time watching me having a pretty guest on our show, and if you have not watched any of our previous episodes, go back to our page in our video section, and you'll find all sorts of good episodes. So do check out our previous episodes as well. They're very fun, and I'm sure you'll love it. Moving on to this episode, guys, we had guests before. So I'm just trying to give you an idea. Like, we had guests before. They were from like Germany, Italy, France. But today we hit the big leagues. You know, every once in a while you start something in your life that you thought was only going to last a few days, but then it hits a mark. And then it hits a mark. So it happens to everybody. So just to let you know, what we're having today is a monumental episode, because today we hit the big leagues. We actually have a very, very talented, a very charming, and a very beautiful professional wrestler from Britain, from UK. She's from UK. Just to give you an idea, that she's only about 21 as to what I read so far about her, and she's so accomplished so much. I'll just get her online because there's so much things that I would like to tell you about her, but I'd rather have her tell you about herself. So right now we're taking online Miss Mariah May. Hi, ma'am. How are you doing today?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for giving your valuable time for our podcast. It's really an honor having you on our show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, I'm sure you'll love the experience, because this basically started as like me and my friend joking around. Then we did episode number 2 with our company's management. Then we did 3, 4, 5. So it just went on, and it just felt like something that was meant to be, you know, sort of like wrestling, you know, when you start and you seem like, you know, it's only probably going to last a few days, but then it just goes on and you start enjoying it, and, you know, everything is just fall into places. So Mariah, so first of all, everybody who's watching this from my neck of the woods, it's not Maria. Just to clear you guys, it's Mariah May. So just like if you know Mariah Carey, she's Mariah May, and she's with us. So we're very glad that she's with us. So Mariah, my first question among all the other questions I had, why wrestling?
I've always been a massive wrestling fan. As a child, I grew up with 2 brothers, and we were obsessed with wrestling, and I never really grew out of it. It's something that I've watched my entire life, from school to like leaving school. And I did a lot of sports at school. I was an athlete at school, and I did a lot of acting as well, a lot of theatre. And when I left school, I kind of had to decide, you know, what to go into. And whilst I was studying at college for a qualification, I really just, I wanted to try, because I felt like if I didn't follow my dreams for the rest of my life, I would just think, what if? Because I felt like I had everything that it took. Plus I had the passion to do it and the love for it. And then I started training, and then just from that first day, it took over my life. Like, I just was excited to go to training every single week. I couldn't wait to make my debut. I was always planning character ideas and new wrestling gear, and I just fell in love with it. It's just, I've never loved anything as much as I love wrestling. So
All right. Well, that's, I think it's also like, if you look up into any wrestlers like documentary or how you want to call it, that's usually how they start with, you know, having a passion from it from the childhood. Like, whether it's John Cena, it's Randy Orton, or anybody from the big leagues that has made it to the level where they have their own biography or documentary. That's how usually it starts. Because I'll tell you, my first impression of you when we discussed that we're finally going to have you, and you said yes, I said, you know, she could easily be in a Bond movie. to be very honest with you, that's my initial thought of you. Like she could be a Bond girl, or she could be Bond herself. Like, apparently there is a new Bond, and she's a female Bond. If you heard about it. So that's there. So you have two brothers, and you love growing up wrestling. Was it also that you? So was it just that you watched with your brothers, or did you also attended it at when you were young with your brothers or your friends?
Yeah, I definitely tried it when I was younger. Obviously, I had two older brothers, so I felt I was always left out. Like, I always wanted to be involved, and like, you know, they would always leave me out, which is probably a good thing. Like, I always had to be the ref. So I would just do like the pinfalls, and which wasn't as fun as the wrestling. But we definitely used to do it all the time when we were younger. I know you're not meant to, but I feel like every kid always does. Like, when they're younger, they always used to wrestle. And now I'm actually a wrestler, so the tables have turned. So if they try and wrestle me now, I'll body slam them.
When you're a referee, I think you can also take out your frustration on your brothers. Like, hey, back off, brother. You're not supposed to be doing this. Like, take off your hands on the. So you were refereeing, and your brothers were wrestling. Was there ever a time with your brothers or with anybody, like, before you actually started wrestling, that you actually attempted it, being a wrestler inside, like, with your brothers or with anybody before you started your actual wrestling, aside from being a referee?
A little bit, but obviously because like they're my older brothers, like they would just like throw me to the side, you know, like I never really got to be involved like that. And then at school, none of my friends watched wrestling. They didn't even know what it was, because I used to come into school, and like anything that happened on Monday Night Raw, I would come in and I would be like, oh my God, like this happened. And they would just be like, they didn't know what I was talking about. And I used to, even like when we used to have like sleepovers and parties, I would always go on YouTube and get like Jeff Hardy, especially because his stuff was always like the coolest. Like, if you're going to show someone like wrestling as a kid, you're going to show them Jeff Hardy doing something crazy. And I would show them like YouTube clips of like WWE and stuff, and like their parents would be like, what is going on? And I'm just like, look, I want to be a wrestler. So.
Yeah, I think it's also very interesting how you said that you were trying to be a ref, because my personal experience was that when I was little, and they very clearly tell you, do not try this at home. And I think they should stop telling people that, because clearly nobody listens. And if people start listening that, then they won't get their future generation of futures, performers, because that's how people get there. They start as being, performers at home and so on. I distinctly remember my brother super kicked me, and I dislocated my shoulder because I went into something flying. Well, all kinds of broken things. Like, I broke he broke my shoulder. I broke his elbow. My friend had a broken jaw from pedigree, because the pedigree landed on the wrong terms, because he didn't land on the mattress. He landed on the actual floor. So we were doing all kinds of. We also did this. Speaking of Jeff Hardy, my brother used to do swanton, and he was very good at it.
My brother used to do swantons as well. It's funny because I always say that my brothers would have made really good wrestlers, because they're both really tall and stuff and quite athletic. So I'm like, you would have been great at wrestling, but they never went for it.
All right. So what do they do? They have their own businesses. They work someplace.
Yeah, they both run their own businesses. So they both run their own businesses, and then I'm a wrestler.
Okay.
My parents are like, "What happened?"
Now you get to travel around the world and be famous. Exactly. All right. So that's everybody. Oh, when all of it started happening, and then when finally things starting to happen with you, like, and when you thought like, okay, well, this is getting actually serious, and I'm going to go ahead and get myself enrolled into actual professional wrestling training. How was your parents, like, how did they react to this? Or were they fully supportive of it, or were they a bit airy about it?
I think it's a difficult one. Like, my mum and I, we watched Total Divas together. So for anyone who doesn't know, Total Divas is a reality show, and it's about the female WWE superstars. It kind of follows their life and stuff about them in the ring, and it shows you like a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. So my family, obviously, when we were kids, we watched it, but my actual family, they don't know too much about wrestling. But my mum and I, we watched that together. So when I said, like, I really want to wrestle, she understood because she's seen, you know, Nikki Bella, Brie Bella, Paige, Natalia. You know, she's seen she's seen what it is and like learned about it. So she thought it was cool. My dad was like, wait, what? Where is this coming from? And then they were more than happy to support me so long as I got a job. So I actually just work in accounts, and that's what I went to college for, just to get that qualification. So if anything went wrong, I'd always have something else to do. And also, like, you know, paying to train, paying for your wrestling gear, you know, your boots, everything like that, it is expensive. So obviously, like, having a job to be able to pay for that and stuff, so long as I kind of had a backup and kind of had a plan, they were more than happy for me to do what I love, because I did a lot of acting and stuff, so I'm used to like being on stage and performing. So they really saw how it all came together, and they were like, yeah, you got to do what you love.
So had this, and like even your father, okay, your mother was pretty supportive. Had your father said no, what would happen then?
I feel like I still would have done it, because to be fair, at the start he was a bit apprehensive. I think he was like worried because I used to be really small, so I think he was worried that like I was going to get hurt. So he wasn't 100% sure, to be honest, but I was always going to go for it because I loved it, and you know, you have to follow your heart. But then when he saw my first match, because my whole family came to see my debut, he was so nervous. Like my mum told me, he was like sitting next to it, and you could see how nervous he was, which I felt really sweet. I was like, that's so like nice. But afterwards he said he was like really proud, and he really understood it, like seeing it live and like seeing what I had worked, because I worked for a year before my debut. And I went to training 3 times a week. I was always in the gym. I put a lot of time into it. And kind of seeing that all pay off and seeing my debut and stuff, he really understood it.
I definitely looked up your debut. It was with, I think, with Nina Samuels, right?
Yeah, Nina, yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I also saw like some of your other interviews that you did, where you also mentioned that was probably one of your best matches so far because of what's involved with it. And I guess your parents being there, part of that audience, being there for you, is also one of the best parts about that match for you, right?
Yeah, it's just, your debut is always going to be special. And I think, you know, because ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a wrestler. Like that day didn't even feel real, because you dream as things. As a little kid, you dream of all these different things, and then to actually have it come true, and also the fact that I worked so hard for it, and I got to wrestle Nina Samuels, who's fantastic. You know, I couldn't have asked for a better debut situation. And like, yeah, my family were there, and like all my friends as well, because the people that I trained with, we trained together for a long time. So like a few of them were also making their debuts, or they were just having matches on the card. You know, so it was a really nice atmosphere. It was a really nice environment. And it was a really special day.
I would assume so, you know, having your family there and everything. So that was about your debut. I just want to take a few steps back before your debut. And I want to ask you, like, what was the first time you actually stepped into a wrestling ring, and what was going through your mind? Was it like, okay, I'm here and I'm doing this? Was it a little bit of nervousness? Like, okay, I'm here, but what am I doing here? What was going through your mind when the first time you entered the ring?
Oh, I was so nervous. Like, I remember I found the school that I was going to train at, and literally I signed up like a month before. And even that whole month, every single night, I would think about it, and I would get nervous. I would get butterflies. I would be so like nervous thinking about it. I would be really excited, but when you care about something so much, and you know, wrestling, it's all about impressions. It's all about respect. So I knew how important it was going to be. Like, I was just so nervous, and even the night before, I just couldn't sleep. I tried to go to bed so early. I probably got about 3 hours sleep. I couldn't sleep. I was just so excited. And then when I got there, you know, I stepped in, and I was like, it was really cool. It was like, it's crazy because it was so cool, but it was also like so nerve wracking. But that's what happens when you care about something. It's like that adrenaline of like, you're like so in awe, but it's also like really intimidating. But I was the only girl. And then once we started though, like I kept up with the guys. Like I was like probably one of the most comprehensive when it came to it, because it was a lot of roles, which is like I did gymnastics. So all of that kind of stuff, all the fitness stuff, I was like, it wasn't new to me. But like once I first got in that ring, I just remember it was so surreal to me. And I just went home and I just knew like, this is what I'm meant to do. Like however long it takes, this is 100% what I want to do for the rest of my life, because I just got in that ring and I took to it, but it felt so good as well. Like it was physically really good, but also mentally, I was just like, this is 100% where I need to be.
It was, I believe the feeling would also be like you're home again. You know, it was a home before, but now you're home again. Because when we used to train, our ring was basically a broken down ring, and it was a boxing ring. So every day we used to set it up. So setting it up would take like an hour, and then wrapping it up would take another hour. And we would just, after the trainings for hours, we would just sit there and like 4 or 5 people would just talk. And we're talking wrestling, but we're just sitting in the ring, we're talking, and none of us want to leave. And I guess like only in the wrestling business where you become best friends with people who you slap in the face, you put your boots in their faces, you tear each other apart, you make each other bleed, and you still love them to pieces. Only in our business, like no other business.
Yeah.
Like this is the only business that it happens in.
Yeah, and it's the only place where you.
All right, so that was that. Exactly, and people would ask like, why we want to stay? Like, because we want to get beaten up. That's why we want to stay in there. Like that's what we do. Like we like to get beaten up for a living. That's what we do. I mean, it takes I guess it's a special breed that really wants to become a professional wrestler, because it's a very tough job, and many people don't understand it. People still take it as, oh, you know, wrestling is fake and all that. So it's actually, you know, I was going to ask this a bit further into the interview, but since it came up, I'm sure you have encountered this. You know, you're a wrestler, wrestling is fake. How do you handle this F word, and how do you respond to it?
You know, everyone has their own opinions. Everyone has things that they enjoy, that they're passionate about. So I used to get a bit angry, because if you're a wrestler and even a wrestling fan, you know how much work goes into becoming a wrestler. Not only do you have to be in great shape physically, but then you have to learn how to wrestle, and then you have to learn how to be a character, and then you have to find your gear and your boots and bring it all together. Like there's so many elements to it. It's not just like, oh, well, you just chuck something on and you get in a ring and it happens. It's like a lot goes into it, a lot of traveling, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy. And like you say, you know, it can hurt, you know. And I used to get quite angry because I felt like it was really disrespectful. So sometimes I try to explain, but sometimes people just don't want to listen. And I think if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. Like if someone said to me, I'm a really big Star Wars fan, or I'm a really big Game of Thrones fan, I would be like, cool. I wouldn't go, well, it's fake. That's not real. I mean, of course it's not real. These are people telling a story, playing characters. It's entertainment, you know? So whenever people try and disregard it, I just say like a lot of hard work goes into it. So, if they're disrespectful, though, I always say like you should come and train for a week and then see how you feel about it, because your body will be so sore and you will not keep up with the actual wrestlers if you come to training with us for a week.
And unlike Star Wars, because even if the movies are fake, they're very, very protective. Like all the stunt people, all the actors, choreographers, they have wires. They have every kind of safety with them. With us, like we're doing everything a movie star would do to perform and entertain you, but then there are no wires, you know, there to protect us. Like, how well would you describe like a 250 or 240 pound, like a man walking, like a running, and you put him over your body and he just lands flat on his back? Of course it's gonna hurt. And so people don't understand. Like I'll tell you very quickly. Like just this morning, on our Facebook page, I got a text from somebody, and I I don't know if we know him or not, but he seems like somebody who's rich and just wants to spoil the money. So he says, I don't have time for training. I don't want to do anything. I just want to come in, do one match, lose, and go away. It's like, buddy, that's not how wrestling works.
No.
That's not how it works.
No. That's like a health and safety accident waiting to happen.
Yeah. Right. I mean, if you're in the ring with somebody who's professionally trained and you're not, you can get paralyzed for life. Like, case in point, Lex Luger, he's like paralyzed for life doing that. And he was professionally trained.
Yeah.
You don't even want to train. You don't even want to spend your life training on it. So speaking of training, Mariah, like, what was your biggest inspiration in all of this?
As in my biggest inspiration, like a wrestler that inspired me?
Yeah, like a performer or a wrestler from the 90s or from the early 2000s who actually inspired you to do this.
I have a few, but my biggest inspirations were Mickie James, because growing up, I always loved Mickie James. And Trish Stratus, because, I mean, I just think she's one of the best. She had so much charisma and she was so memorable. Like, when people talk about, like, women's wrestling from the past, they'll always say Trish Stratus. And it's like, what made her so memorable? What made her stick out so much? And what I love about Trish as well is she was underestimated so much because she was a model. People kind of just disregarded her, and she improved every single week and became one of the greatest female wrestlers of all time. And I get a lot of stick sometimes. People look at me and they think, well, you know, she doesn't really care, or she's just a model. You know, they don't listen to the fact that I've been a fan ever since I was a child. I train all the time. I work really hard at it. They don't care because they just want to judge me for how I look. And Trish overcame all of that. And that really inspires me as someone who constantly has to overcome these opinions and this negative kind of connotation that I get because of my image. I constantly have to like break those barriers as well. So definitely Trish Stratus.
I think they would probably be more happy with a nerd figure. Like with wrestling fans, we basically want so let's face the facts. Like, most of us are nerds. Like, we're watching wrestling, you know. We're buying off comics, and me included. I mean, I'm not going to exclude myself from that trajectory. Like, the entire group, I'm part of it. But then I'm also not going to deny your passion if you're an extremely good-looking person, because if you watch that movie, I'm sure you have, Fighting with My Family, that I made on Page. Same thing happened with her when nothing didn't happen with her, but when she was training there in NXT, trying to become, and there were a lot of people there who were wrestling, like women, and they were also very extremely good looking, so they were regarded as models and not really professional wrestlers. So I think they just, like, if you have like a ponytail or something and you don't do makeup as much, maybe they would like, oh, she's a nerd, she's one of us, welcome to the wrestling, honey.
No,
maybe that's when they will take it.
I'd have to dye my hair, I feel like, but I just think there's an important lesson there in the fact that, like, you should never.
Well, I'm sure they'll come around. I'm sure they can.
You should never judge a book by its cover, and like, I would never see someone and think they don't care, or like, I would never judge something about someone from the way that they look. Like, wrestlers, if you look at even WWE's roster, from Otis to Dolph Ziggler to Mandy Rose to Sonya to Ruby Riott, they're all so different. They all have different backgrounds, but they all are great wrestlers. They all care about wrestling. So whatever your background might be, whatever way you might look, if you care about wrestling and you work hard at wrestling, then you should be accepted just like anyone else. But I think it's definitely true, because there are a few other girls I know that kind of sometimes get a bit of stick just for being blonde, or like the way that they look, or they might model. And I think that's so unfair, because you judge them by what they do in the ring and by their work ethic and by their respect, not because they've got blonde hair.
All right. So then the other thing that I wanted to ask you, because it almost seems unrealistic to how it all panned out for you, because before your debut in like NXT UK, you were only training for like a year before. Is that right? Right?
before my tryout. I haven't wrestled on NXT UK. I only had a tryout.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you had a tryout. So before the tryout, like, what was the duration that you were already training it for? Like 1 year? I guess that's you were training for an year, right? Before your tryout?
Yeah, I trained for 1 year
Mm-hmm.
and I had 3 matches.
Mm-hmm. All right, are we here?
Yeah, it just froze. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hey, can you hear me now?
I can, but it's a little bit delayed. I think it's caught up now.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think it's fine now. See,
Yeah.
that's what happens. That's what universe does to you, you know. When you're actually doing something great in life for once, and this starts happening.
Oh,
Like
it
universe's
happens
way
to
of
me
saying,
all
like,
the
no,
time.
you don't get to do this. Not so easily.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. All right, all right. So when you started training and everything, by the way, have you heard of when you're working there and you're training? Have you heard of GBW there? So I think Great Britain Wrestling or Great British Wrestling. I'm not sure of the exact phrase.
No.
All right, all right. Well, it's a wrestling company there also. One of our performers in REW is trained from GBW, so he's also
Oh,
from
okay.
UK.
Okay,
So I
cool.
thought maybe you know. All right. So when you finally get that chance to do the tryout, like how did that happen? How did that come around to be the possibility for you?
So I really didn't expect it. I mean, obviously WWE is my goal. You know, I'm a massive WWE fan since I was a kid, and I feel like, you know, ever since I left school, I've been working for that my whole life. I've been very religious in the gym. I've
Mm-hmm.
been very committed to my training, and it's always been in the back of my mind. Like whenever I make decisions and
Mm-hmm.
do things, it's always about that goal. But as I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, I'd only trained for a year. I'd only had
Mm-hmm.
3 matches. So I didn't anticipate
Mm-hmm.
it would happen, but I was invited to try out. And of course, I was so happy to take the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity. It was the first ever all women's NXT UK tryout. So that was incredible. That was in June. So yeah, I went to the tryout and there was such a great group of girls there. There were some that had wrestled for like 6 years. There were some that had wrestled for slightly less. There were a few
Mm-hmm.
girls that were in my position where they were quite new. So it was a really like mixed group, which was great. And yeah, it was an amazing experience. We got to do loads of drills, promos, stuff in the ring. I got to work with Sarah Stock, William Regal. It was a phenomenal experience. I got to work with James Mason. I just learned so much from these incredible coaches, and even working with girls that have been doing it for like 6 years, getting to work with them and just wrestle with them and stuff. I'm so grateful to have the experience so early on, because I felt like it really put me in a good position moving forward with my career, because I got so much great advice and feedback to move on with. So like this past year, I've always had that in the back of my mind as well.
Mm-hmm. So when you went there for the first time, did you fangirl out, like just looking at the logos and everything? Because I know I would have, like, seeing William Regal, I would have suffocated there right on the floor.
um, yeah, I was definitely like starstruck, but I have quite a good poker face, so I can keep it
Mm-hmm.
inside. When I met William Regal, I was just so honored to meet him. And then going into the Performance Center, which is incredible, the one that they have in the UK. It's so cool that
Mm-hmm.
WWE is in the UK. That's something I never thought would have happened. You know, when I used to dream about WWE, I would dream about
Mm-hmm.
going to America and going to their massive performance center in Orlando. So for me to see this performance center in the UK and, you know, not so far away from where I live was amazing. Like just
Mm-hmm.
seeing all the posters and the graphics on the wall, and they're all framed, and it's just the most incredible facility. And like seeing a WWE ring and actually getting into a WWE ring. I mean, they're huge and they've got the logos on them, and just, you know, like running the ropes in front of William Regal. was so honored. And yeah, I was definitely like inside, like the child in me was just like, this isn't real. But I just contained it and I used it to help me and to help like spur me on, you know, when you're doing these drills, because they're intense, they're hard work. But I just used that like feeling just to help me, that excitement to push me on and help me complete the drills.
See, that's exactly why you're having a tryout and I'm on the other side having a podcast. Because if I was you, I would have just been suffering like, all right, so William, I saw you standing there. I saw the WWE logo. That's basically enough for my heart for today. I'll come back some other time. Thank you so much. That would have been me. That would have been me.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, I'm such a fanboy for like WWE because we all are like growing up. That's all we had. Like we didn't know New Japan. We didn't know Ring of Honor. We didn't know like TNA was there, but we really didn't, look up TNA stuff.
Yeah.
Because WWE has dominated the entire 90s and the entire 80s, and I'm not sure about the 80s, but 90s and then 2000s, that whole Attitude Era came, and then the Ruthless Aggression era, and then the whatever the modern era, however you want to call it. So that's one of the great things. And speaking of Attitude Era, and you mentioned of Trish, and there was also Lita. Stephanie was also working for some time. She also held the championship So how would you say, from your perspective, from being a wrestler who happens to be a woman, not a woman wrestler, I hate that term, basically, like a wrestler who happens to be a woman, So from your perspective, how has wrestling changed for women wrestling since the Attitude Era?
I mean, it's definitely more respectful, but I think it's so important. We talk about the women's evolution, and obviously women's wrestling now, we have so many women on the card. We have more than one match. We've got more than one championship. We've got the girls in NXT, and it's come so far, but I think it's so important to pay tribute to what came before, because when you watch those, I mean, it's clear to see, but even when you watch documentaries and you have Trish and you have Lita, they talk about how like they always wanted to go the extra mile. Like I think they had, I don't know if it's like, when they have like is it chocolate pudding or like that brown stuff in the pool and they throw the girls into it? Trish was like, no, I want to be thrown off the stage. Like Trish wanted to take up, she's like, I don't know if we've thrown into it, like throw me off the top of the stage. Like she wanted it to be memorable. And she was like, that's not something that should be a big deal or a memorable moment, but she pushed to make it that extra step. And you hear so many stories about that from the women of the past, where they say like they used to just go that extra mile and do what they could to make sure they got the TV time, or they got the match, or they got that memorable thing and people talking about them. And, we saw Trish versus Lita in the main event of Raw. We kind of almost got there before, and then I think it got pulled back in a little bit with the next generation. And then obviously now where we had NXT, and then all the women on NXT were getting like 15 minutes and they were having these amazing matches. And like you say, like, it's almost like you don't need to call them a women's wrestler. They're just wrestlers. Like they're all doing the same thing here as what the guys are doing. And then I also do credit reality shows like Total Divas and Total Bellas, because I think they got more female fans and more people who were interested in the women's wrestling to watch Monday Night Raw and to watch SmackDown, because they were watching this reality show, and then they obviously want to watch the actual wrestling. And then there was only like a 2-minute match. The Bella Twins would come out and their match would be like 5 minutes. And, I think that combined with the girls in NXT proving that it can be done, I think massively just pushed for what women should have had all along. But like, I'm a massive fan of women throughout all of the eras, because I think they all did the best with what they were given. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be so fortunate to have what we have now. But women's wrestling now is incredible. Like when you watch WWE, like 50% of it at least is the women. We've got the tag belts. We've got a belt on each brand. We've got the NXT belt, NXT UK Women's Championship. So, I love it. I've always been a massive women's wrestling fan. Like growing up, I had the Divas and I still wanted to be a wrestler. So, they did their job. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of all the eras.
So when we're talking about like all the women and everything, how can we forget Tessa? Because I think she's still the Impact World Champion as far as I can remember.
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't really keep up with Impact that much, but yeah, I feel like she still is. Yeah,
but I think it was. I think they did set a precedent which hasn't been set before. Like, I don't think any women wrestler has held the company's main title ever before in the history. Like, Impact did it first. So when that entire thing happened, what did you think about it? Or did you really not follow through or any of that?
I did keep up with it because obviously everyone was talking about it because it was, like you say, it not really been done before. Like, we've seen China, but they've never been the main belts. There's always been the Intercontinental or maybe the hardcore belt. So we've never seen it on that level. I thought it was amazing. Like, to be honest, when you look at Tessa as well, like, she's really strong and like she can definitely hold her own. So it was believable. I thought it was awesome, but my thing is like, where does it end then? If you make like the women and men fight each other, then there wouldn't be a women's belt. You know what? Like, I kind of like that they're separate. I do like intergender wrestling. Like, I've wrestled guys before and I've had some really, really good matches and really good stories that we could tell. But I think you're limited on the stories you could tell if it was all intergender. And I quite like that, you know, women have their own brand and they have their own titles and their own tag division and they've got their own stuff. And then the men have theirs. I do like it when there's little crossovers and special moments. So we talk about China going into the Rumble, Beth going into the Rumble, Nia Jax going into the Rumble when Randy Orton RKO'd her and her whole thing with Ray. You know, that was like awesome. But when you look at Nia Jax, she's like 6 foot. She's a heavyweight. It's believable. You know, but some of the other girls who are small, I don't know. I like them to have their own divisions. I think Tessa made sense and it was believable, but I do think these should be like one-off moments. And I personally would prefer for them to be separate divisions, but you know.
Speaking of Rumbles, you actually hurt my sentiments there for just a second, because you mentioned every female performer who went into Rumble. How can you forget Santina Marella? She was in the Rumble too. Like, probably a few seconds, but she was there. She was there. She was also what I don't remember which WrestleMania, but she also won the women's
Miss WrestleMania.
She won the Miss WrestleMania. Like, she was there. She's like, at least she's providing you the entertainment, right?
It was,
along
a
with
really
wrestling.
Good story. Yeah, and also what's great about that, you bring up Miss WrestleMania. Like, first of all, you remember it. It's very funny how it all worked. And then also when Santina entered the Rumble, she had Beth Phoenix, and they kind of like revisited that story. So it's Santina Marella was always really, really entertaining, and I thought that was very funny. Even growing up, you know, when I was younger, I remember being so angry as like a little girl.
There was also a time where there was also a time like in 2000s, late 2000s, where Beth and Santina were together in a storyline. I don't know if you remember that, but then they changed Beth to Emma, and then Emma didn't really work out. So then also Santina left. So there we go. So that's Santina. Like, I mean, I'm sure you would have liked to have a match with Santina one day.
I mean, I'd win.
Probably for Miss WrestleMania, I guess.
Yes, I want to be Miss WrestleMania.
I mean, of course you'd win. That's a given. That's given. You will win. All right. So speaking of, like, you mentioned about like wrestling boys before and in intergender matches. How was that experience for you? Because I know a few people who don't really like to get into the intergender matches because they think it'd be awkward and something. So when you first got into that and when you first got the chance to do it, what was your experience, and how have you liked it?
I mean, I've really enjoyed it. As I mentioned, I was the only girl at my training school, so I trained with the guys. And actually, an issue that I had, you kind of touched it, was, you know, guys didn't want to wrestle me because they kind of felt uncomfortable about it. But I was the only girl. I have no one else to wrestle. Like, please, someone wrestle me. And, you know, some of the guys were great. Like, they'd get in with me and we'd work really, really well together. Like, I trained with guys. And I actually, I'm grateful for that, because I think it really affected the way that I wrestle. It made me a better wrestler. And then when we talk about like matches that I've had, I mean, both guys that I've wrestled, I've been bigger than them. So with that, first of all, the story was believable. But, you know, the matches that we have are on family shows. And I think the reason sometimes people could be uncomfortable is if like a 6'5" guy is, you know, like beating me up, like really like, you know, I think some people might be uncomfortable. You know, it's a difficult debate. Like some people like it, some people don't. I like intergender wrestling, but I like it when it's competitive and believable. And sometimes on family shows, they don't like the hard hitting stuff. They don't, you know, they don't want to see like strikes. They don't want to see that kind of stuff. But in my experience, both the guys I wrestled, we told a really good story. Especially one of the guys I wrestled called Robbie. We told such a good story. Like the crowd absolutely loved it. They hated him. And when I hit him with my finish, they just went crazy. Like they loved it. So we did a really good job with that crowd. And I personally really enjoyed it because both the guys I've wrestled have been really, really good. So I've improved a lot from wrestling them. We had a great match. So they have actually been some of my favorites. I think I'm a fan of intergender wrestling. I just think it has to be done in the right way.
Yeah, it has to be done in the right way. Otherwise, it just gets pretty awkward. Because I didn't get into that intergender matches all that much. When I started, the next match I stumbled upon was Gargano versus his now wife Candice LeRae, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a bit odd. How does this work? It turned out it was a gag match because he proposed her during the match, and then he schoolboy her and pinned her for the 1, 2, 3. So it was nice. She got engaged during a match. Only in wrestling you get engaged by beating each other. All right, so Mariah, here's the thing. We actually are running out of time, and I wish I had some sort of time machine to reverse it back so we could have some more minutes with you. But unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we only have like the last couple of minutes left. And in the last couple of minutes, what we do is we do two very important things. Number one is I have a specially designed lightning round for all of our guests. And so it's just a series of like rapid questions. So you don't have the time to answer. Like you don't have the time to think, but you do have to answer very quick.
Yeah.
And so that's that. And then before we go, we just take some of our questions. Like this is live. This is like really live on our page. So people are asking like tons of questions, I'm sure. I haven't checked it because I'm so involved in like our podcast right now. So we'll get to the lightning round first, and then we'll get to the questions. I'm sure the questions will be decent enough to take online. So are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes.
All right, so you wanna warm up for the lightning round because the questions are pretty tough.
I'm ready.
Okay, there we go. All right, so series of questions. Now, you don't have time to think, as I mentioned. You just have to answer very rapidly. Your first question, Mariah. Texting or talking? What do you prefer?
Talking.
Favorite day of the week?
Saturday.
All right. Favorite holiday?
America. Oh, you mean like a Christmas kind of stuff? I thought you meant like a vacation.
Yeah, like a holiday, like a vacation. So Christmas counts.
Okay, Christmas.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, and you have to answer this very honestly because none of the women guests I had, I don't think they answered it clearly. So I'm gonna ask you to play it safe. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a secret keeper you are?
How good of a what? I didn't hear the question.
How good of a secret keeper? Like how?
An 8 because I tell my mum everything. So apart from that, I'm great.
All right, so only mom. All right. If you would have the following superpowers, which one would you choose? Okay, the following are superpowers. Which one would you choose? Invisibility or super strength? Which one would you choose?
Super strength.
All right, I'm glad you didn't say invisibility because a lot of people you would know would have to lock their doors every now and then. All right. If you were to be a Disney princess, Would you be Ariel or Jasmine, and why?
I'd want to be Elsa from Frozen. I don't want to be those two. I want to be Elsa. She has the magical
Oh, okay.
powers.
You do have the
Yeah.
look. You have the look and everything. You even have the hair.
Yeah.
All right, Elsa. All right, there we go. All right. Do you like horror movies?
Yes.
All right. Do you get scared after watching them?
No.
All right. Then we need to find an appointment because everybody gets scared after that. All right. So final question. Final question. Your final question for the lightning round. If for hypothetically say you're about 80 years old and you've done everything you wanted to do in your life and you're with your grandkids, what advice would you give your grandkids about the kind of life you had?
Always follow your dreams and don't let anyone stop you from doing something you want to do.
All right. With that, okay, I'm back.
You good?
Maria, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. For some reason, I cannot see you.
Oh,
That's odd.
hold on.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Now I can see you. Now I can see you.
awesome.
So that was the end of our lightning round. You played very well. So lots of clapping for you.
Yay!
And you know, usually, at the end of round when you play something and you play it good, you get rewards and everything. Unfortunately, this is a live podcast, so but we do have our blessings and all of our wishes to give you. So
Aw.
whenever you go to NXT, whether you would like to go someplace else, wherever you want to go, whatever you want to do, our blessings and our best of lucks, all the blessings in the world from me, from my entire team, from Revolutionary Eastern Wrestling, would always be with you.
Oh, thank you.
All right. So in the final minute, we'll take a few questions, and you can answer as much as you like. All right. So then we. All right. So, hi, Mariah. So, this is a question from our current Asian champion. So, he's our current REW Asian champion. And his question is basically what you've already answered. He's asking, what are your thoughts about women competing in male division like China and before, and like now Charlotte Flair? I don't think Charlotte Flair had an intergender match, but I think you've already answered that question in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. All right. So then we have a person asking, are you a CM Punk fan?
Not especially. I think he was great, but no, I'm more of a Roman Reigns fan.
All right. Did you get my last question?
Yeah, I answered it. I feel like I was still live, so I think they heard.
All right. So yeah, you were live. Yeah, they did hear you. All
Yay.
right. So next question we have Alan Lunik. I'm not sure how to spell his last name. I'm sorry, Alan. Your last name I can't pronounce it. He's asking, are you now a part of UK NXT UK? I don't think you're part of UK yet, right?
No, I'm still a completely independent wrestler.
Okay, got it. All right. So who else we on here? I think we also got a question from our chairman, but I cannot find it on here. A lot of questions here. All right. Then we have another question from you for you actually, and that is, Mariah, would you ever be interested in doing?
Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
The question cut off, so I didn't hear the question.
The question is, would you be willing to travel to other countries other than US, like probably
Yeah,
Japan or
yeah.
Canada?
Actually, before COVID-19, before the lockdown, I was meant to wrestle in Germany and Finland. A big goal of mine
Mm-hmm.
is to wrestle
Mm-hmm.
internationally as much as possible whilst I'm an independent wrestler, and I
Mm-hmm.
definitely want to wrestle in Japan. That's a very
Mm-hmm.
big goal of mine. Something that I definitely want to accomplish in the future.
All right, great. So, Mariah, that was all the questions that I had for our podcast today. If there are other questions, if you're ever have any time later in the future, we'll definitely
Yeah,
do a part two with you if you're free.
yeah.
We're at the end of our podcast, and I just want to thank you again for giving your valuable time to our podcast. It really means a lot to us, and we again hope you best of luck for your future and everything. And we just want to see you succeed in every way that you see fit. We want to see you in Raw. We want to see you in SmackDown. We want to see you headline WrestleMania one day, definitely. Um, we're all the fans of Mariah May in Pakistan. That's for sure.
Yay! Oh, well, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. That was all a pleasure. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, including Mariah. It was great talking to her. It was a lovely experience getting to know her journey, how she became a wrestler, now her future plans and everything. So, I'm sure you'll be seeing her a lot of. And by the way, if you guys would like, let me just also plug this here. You guys can. If you guys have Instagram, you can also follow Mariah on Instagram. Mariah, would you like to tell them what your Instagram is?
Yeah, my Instagram is at Mariah May X, and it's at Mariah May X on Twitter, on YouTube, and all my social platforms.
Great, great. So I'm sure you'll have many more followers after this, and I'm sure you have enjoyed this interview. With that being said, guys, thank you for everybody. Thank you for everybody who joined us today, and we hope that you have a wonderful time. Please stay safe, stay indoors, and please be responsible for yourself and for your family as well. We'll meet you next time in the next episode of Podcast of Awesomeness. Stay awesome. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.